As the sun set over the peaceful forest, David encountered a bear standing before him, appearing distressed. Unlike the bears he had encountered on his hikes, this one wasn't aggressive or fleeing, but seemed to be crying. Not sure how to respond, David tried to intimidate the bear by making himself appear larger and shouting, but it had no effect. When the bear slowly approached him, David froze, realizing fleeing would be a bad idea, so he waited for the next move. Surprisingly, the bear allowed David to approach after he mimicked its sniffing behavior. The bear seemed to trust him, stepping back and allowing David to come closer. As the bear started moving away, David hesitated, but a loud growl made it clear that the bear wanted him to follow. Despite his anxiety, David decided to trust the bear and followed behind, uncertain of where it was leading him. As they moved deeper into the forest, David wondered if the bear was leading him toward danger, but tried to focus on his wilderness experience, hoping it would keep him safe. After about 30 minutes, the bear left the path, and David became concerned about how he would return. But the bear growled impatiently, urging him to follow without delay. David trusted his instincts and continued, trying to remember landmarks in case he needed to find his way back. Eventually, they reached a fast-flowing river, and David realized the bear wanted to cross to the other side. However, the current was too strong for safe crossing. The bear paced back and forth, frustrated. But suddenly, David heard a mysterious noise from the other side. The bear had likely crossed earlier, but now it was impossible. David spotted a makeshift bridge formed by fallen trees and vines and cautiously approached, hoping the bear wouldn't think he was fleeing. Despite the risks, the bear's agitation encouraged him to move forward. With a deep breath, David stepped onto the bridge, each movement deliberate as he tested the structure beneath him. David crossed the bridge slowly, trying not to look at the turbulent water below and focusing on the stable ground ahead. His hands gripped the vines tightly, the rough texture biting into his skin. Each step reflected his determination to help the bear, showing that he understood the urgency behind the bear's actions. The terrain became more difficult as they moved deeper into the forest, an area far from the paths David knew, with dense vegetation and uneven ground. He noticed how easily the bear moved, its familiarity with the landscape contrasting with David's careful steps. The forest seemed ancient and untouched by civilization, and David began to feel uneasy as he realized he was entering a part of nature few had seen. As night fell, the forest transformed, with the canopy blocking the last light of the sun. The world around them grew darker and more threatening, heightening David's senses as he became aware of every rustle in the vegetation and every cracking branch. The bear, however, appeared indifferent, moving confidently through the twilight. The symphony of the night in the forest grew louder, with mysterious calls and whispers filling the air. David began to trust the bear more, understanding that in this strange, moonlit world, he was a visitor, surrounded by a wild nature that followed rhythms beyond his understanding. David marveled at the bear's connection to the land, following closely as the bear led the way. The weight of solitude became heavy on him as he realized how far he had strayed from the familiar trails. He felt both exhilarated and intimidated, completely alone except for the bear. It was a world governed by ancient rules that ignored him, and he was an outsider, guided by a creature that embodied the mystery and power of the forest. As they ventured into the unknown, their silent agreement allowed David to navigate the wilderness, knowing that the bear was guiding him through a world where human presence was irrelevant. The forest around them was a labyrinth of silver shadows and dim light, and David remained vigilant, scanning the surroundings for any signs of movement or danger. The bear stayed close, offering a comforting presence in the darkness. The cool, fresh night air carried the scent of pine and earth, a reminder of the wilderness enveloping them. As they traveled, David began to notice signs of a forgotten past. Unusual footprints, a torn circus poster, and abandoned objects suggesting a hidden story in the depths of the forest. David's curiosity grew as he pieced together these clues, imagining a circus that had met its end in this isolated place. The bear's urgency seemed to grow, indicating a connection to this forgotten narrative. Deeper into the forest, they came upon an abandoned circus, its tent shredded and faded, surrounded by rusted rides and stands. The once joyful scene had become a haunting, abandoned memory, overtaken by nature. Among the ruins, David found cages containing mistreated animals, their eyes reflecting neglect and suffering. The sight of these creatures, so out of place in the circus grounds, stirred a deep sadness and anger in David. The bear, moving with familiarity, seemed to push David to understand the significance of this place, a connection to a past life filled with sorrow and loss. It became clear to David that the bear had once been part of this circus, perhaps a star performer reduced to a mere shadow of its former self. David began to piece together the bear's past and the suffering of the animals around him, a story of abandonment and despair. The once thriving circus had left behind both human and animal performers, and the contrast between the bear's newfound freedom and its past captivity was heartbreaking. David felt empathy for the creatures left to languish in the ruins, a place that sharply contrasted with the natural beauty of the surrounding forest. The circus, a site of neglect and decay, served as a stark reminder of the consequences of human actions on nature. Moved by the suffering, David knew he couldn't simply walk away. He checked his phone, hoping for a signal to contact animal rescue services. In a frantic attempt, he made a call, his fingers trembling as he searched for any connection in the remote forest. A weak signal finally appeared, and David relayed the urgency of the situation, describing the abandoned circus and the animals' dire conditions. He hoped his message was clear enough for help to arrive. David prepared to spend the night near the cages, staying vigilant. The calm presence of the bear offered some comfort while he improvised a shelter. His mind was preoccupied with the arrival of the rescue team and how to transport the animals. Despite his fatigue, he couldn't rest. The fate of the animals depended on it. Standing among the ruins, David felt a deep sense of responsibility. The sounds of the forest around him, while his focus remained solely on the animals' well-being. His heart tightened as he realized the extent of the suffering that had taken place in this forgotten corner of the world. David kept a close watch on the animals, offering words of comfort even though they couldn't understand him. The bear stayed nearby, a silent, watchful presence, forming an unspoken bond with David. When the rescue team arrived, relief washed over him as they assessed the situation. The team uncovered the dark history of the circus, revealing illegal poaching and animal exploitation. David calmed the animals and actively participated in their rescue and treatment. The rescue operation quickly drew media attention, bringing the suffering of the animals and the circus's illegal activities to light. David's involvement sparked a larger conversation about animal welfare, with calls for stricter wildlife protection laws and ethical treatment of captive animals. The bear became a symbol of resilience and hope, inspiring change and action in the fight for animal rights. David's activism brought attention to the abuse of animals in captivity, and he became a respected figure in the animal rights community. His journey transformed him into a passionate advocate for wildlife and conservation, sharing his story through interviews, articles, and a blog to raise awareness about animal rights and the cruelty of captivity. Reflecting on his experience, David realized how the journey had redefined his understanding of nature and his place in it. The bond he had formed with the bear became a symbol of hope and change, guiding him on his path to becoming a protector and advocate for the natural world.